The next topic is going to go to Bill Brown, and that's going to be the witnesses.
Hold on.
Well, basically, you have so as far as the witnesses to the Tippett slaying, you had Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. They were out in the front yard. They were a block east of 10th and Patton, and then you have Domingo Benavides in his pickup truck, and obviously he was driving towards the patrol car when the shots rang out. And you have Helen Markham. She was walking down Patton on the way to her bus stop. She's standing at the corner of 10th and Patton, the northwest corner of 10th and Patton, which is kind of catty corner to the corner in question. And she saw the patrol car stop and the man walk over to the car. Shots ring out. You have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. They hear the shots. They look back down the street. You have Benavides swerves his truck hard to the right. He was damn near 15 feet from the patrol car, so that startled him. Markham starts to scream and drop to her knees. Scoggins is in his cab. He hears the shots, basically sees the officer fall and the gunman run in his direction. So he gets out of his cab. Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis, they were in the house on the corner of 10th and Patton, and they both come to the front door. They see a gunman cutting across their yard with a gun in his hand. Scoggins is leaving his cab. He's trying to run away and decides there's nowhere to hide. So he crosses back the street back to the cab and starts to hide behind the driver's side back quarter panel, looking over the back trunk. This is when he hears the killer say, "Poor damn cop," or "Poor dumb cop," says it twice. And then the killer proceeds down Patton. He's seen by Sam Ginyard and is also seen by Ted Calloway running down Patton. Now, these guys obviously heard the shots. They go out to the sidewalk and they look north up Patton and they see this gunman coming down the street. And then you have four guys at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company a block south of the shooting scene. Now, this was located at the corner of Patton and Jefferson. This will be the southeast corner, which is across the street from Ted Calloway's lot. And so these four fellows, L.J. Lewis, Warren Reynolds, Harold Russell, and Pat Patterson, they look up the street, and all four of these guys see the killer coming down the street with a gun in his hand. Now, here's the thing. All these witnesses, let me count them up here. We have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. That's 2. Benavides is 3. Markham is 4. The Davis sister-in-laws is 6. Scoggins is 7. Calloway and Ginyard make 9. And the 4 guys at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company make 13 people. Okay. Now, Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith never said the killer was Oswald. Benavides never said the killer was Oswald, even though he does use Oswald's name a couple of times when describing the actions of the killer. But I don't use Benavides as a witness for the killer being Oswald. Okay. Helen Markham picks Oswald at a lineup. Barbara Davis picks Oswald at a lineup. Virginia Davis picks Oswald at a lineup. William Scoggins picks Oswald at a lineup. Sam Ginyard picks Oswald at a lineup. Ted Calloway picks Oswald as a lineup. Okay. The 4 guys at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company, 3 of them, Harold Russell, Pat Patterson, and Warren Reynolds, said the man they saw was Oswald, and L.J. Lewis was uncertain. So these 13 witnesses, 9 of them said it was Oswald. 4 of them couldn't make a decision one or the other, but none of the 13 said the guy was not Oswald. Unless you want to, and I'm talking about what they told the authorities in 1963 or 1964. Okay. So Jimmy Burt was interviewed by the FBI in 1964, makes no mention that the killer was not Oswald. He just gave a description of the guy. Matt's going to bring up some interview given 4 or 5 years later to Al Chapman or whoever it was, talking about how Burt supposedly said the guy wasn't Oswald, but he didn't tell that to the FBI in 1964. So Matt wants to use first day evidence. I think he's even used those exact words earlier in this debate. First day evidence, basically, we're talking about a 1964 FBI interview. It might even be December 63. I have to look at Burt's interview, but he doesn't make any reference whatsoever to the guy not being Oswald. He just didn't say the guy was Oswald. So I just listed 13 witnesses, and 9 of these 13 said the man they saw was Lee Harvey Oswald. 4 of the 13 said that the man they saw, they couldn't be certain one way or the other, but 0 of these 13 said the man was not Lee Harvey Oswald to the authorities, which is when it counts.
Okay, to which we talked about all this last time, but I will say, to which I simply say, you mean the unfair lineups and the photo that was shown to them many months after all this happened, after he was nationally known? Okay, anyway.
Well, the unfair lineups, I mean, you asked me a question, let me answer. So the unfair lineups, basically, when you say the lineups are unfair, you're basically accusing Helen Markham, Barbara Davis, Virginia Davis, William Scoggins, Sam Ginyard, and Ted Calloway of going to these lineups and basically saying, I'm going to pick the guy who most resembled the guy I saw, even if the guy I saw is not in the lineup. I'm just going to pick the guy who most resembled. Nope, that's not what they were doing, Matt. They were going there to pick a guy that they saw, and if they didn't see the guy, they wouldn't have picked a guy.
Again, unfair lineups, and we talked about that already. But anyway, you mentioned Jim.
Again, these witnesses went to the lineup and picked the man they saw. They didn't pick a man who most resembled the man they saw. They picked the man they saw.
Okay. Okay, so you mentioned Jimmy Burt. And so Jimmy Burt was never asked in 1964, or if he was never asked about any identification whatsoever. So it's very misleading for you to say that he didn't, what was the argument that you said?
I said to the authorities in 1963 or 1964, Jimmy Burt never told any of them that the man he saw was not Oswald.
Because he was never asked that question.
So the FBI takes time out of their day, sends 2 agents to go interview Jimmy Burt, and they're not going to ask him if he thought the man was Oswald or not.
If they did, they didn't write it down. I wonder why. Probably because when Al Chapman caught up with him in 1968, he said, no, the killer was not Oswald. No.
So Chapman asked the question that the FBI forgot to ask.
Again, like I said, Bill, if the FBI asked him that question, they didn't report it or write it down. I wonder why. Probably because he said it wasn't Oswald.
So you think that Jimmy Burt is going to tell the FBI that the man was not Oswald, and they're going to leave that off of the report?
Yes. We know what.
On what grounds? On what grounds are you saying that?
Listen. They never asked him, or if they did ask him, they didn't write it down. So therefore, what we have to rely on is when he was asked that question. And he was asked that question in 1968 by Al Chapman, and he was also asked in the 1970s by Larry Harris if it was Oswald. And he told them, no, it was not Oswald. So that's what we have to go by, because they never asked him the FBI never asked him. Or if they did ask him, they never wrote it down. So therefore, what we have to go by is what he told Chapman and Harris.
The FBI went out and interviewed Jimmy Burt. He gave a description of the guy, and he didn't say the guy wasn't Oswald. He just described the guy as best as he could.
Again, are you not hearing what I'm saying, Bill? If they did ask him, they didn't write it down. There's nothing in his 1964 interview with the FBI about any identification whatsoever. So therefore, what we have to go on is what he told Chapman and Harris. Correct or no?
No, I'm going by what he told the FBI in December. It was in December of '63.
Again, they never asked him that question, or if they did, they never wrote it down. So you're basing it on something that's not in the report. They never wrote it down if he told them, or they didn't ask him. So therefore, what we have
you're making up a scenario which for all we know didn't take place. You're making up a scenario.
I'm not making up a scenario. It's very simple. They did not ask him about any identification of Oswald or show him a picture. Or if they did, I know I keep repeating myself because it's not getting to you, getting through your head. But anyway, what we have to rely on is what he told Chapman and Harris, because that information is not in his original interview. They never asked him the question.
Jimmy Burt told the FBI, he described the guy, white male, 5'8", wearing a light-colored jacket, and he said he could not describe the man further.
Yes.
Nothing about the man not being Oswald, which is nothing about the man not being. He didn't tell him the man was not Oswald, or would have been in. So
do you take that statement to mean that I can't describe him any further than what I just described? It means that he can't identify the person? That's amazing. No, he said that the killer looked like this, and this, and that's all I can describe of him. You're twisting that. You're twisting that.
No, he describes the man as a white male, approximately 5'8", wearing a light-colored jacket. Yeah. That's it. Period. Yes. He doesn't say it was not Oswald. He doesn't say it was Oswald, but he doesn't say it wasn't.
He made it imply that.
I'm not implying that Jimmy Burt said it was Oswald. I've never used Jimmy Burt as a witness.
Okay, so look, it's very simple. Okay, very, very simple. Jimmy Burt said it was not Oswald. Okay, and I know what your argument is, Bill. He did not say that. That statement is not written in his FBI interview. Well,
Jimmy Burton did not tell the FBI in 1964 or 1963. It was December 63. He did not tell the FBI that the man was not Oswald. It's not in the report. He didn't tell them that
because they didn't ask them the question. It took Chapman and Harris, the real investigators, to ask him that question.
That's absurd. That's absurd.
I'm
That's
telling you, it's not in the report. So it's not in his report with the FBI. Why isn't it?
The FBI went out to interview Jimmy Burton to find out what he saw. And if the man was not Oswald, he would have told him that at that moment, and it would have been in the report, Matt. It's not in the report.
Either they didn't ask him, or they asked him and he told them, and they didn't write it down. So no matter what, there's no information in there about any identification or Oswald or anything. So what we have to rely on is when he was asked that and when it was written down about what his response was. And he was asked in 68 and in the 70s, and he said it was not Oswald. End of story. It's as simple as that. He said it was not Oswald. Next topic.
No, the next topic is Jimmy Bird is a witness for the killer being neither Oswald or being Oswald, but he's not a witness for the killer being someone other than Oswald.
Yes, it is. He said it was not Oswald. He said it was not Oswald.
I'm getting kind of hung up on Jimmy Bird.
Yeah, he said it was not.
So basically, you have William Scoggins, Helen Markham, Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis, Sam Ginyard and Ted Calloway. These 6 men and women attended a police lineup, 5 of them on Friday night, Scoggins on Saturday. All 6 of them picked Oswald as the man they saw either shoot the police officer or running from the scene with a gun in his hand right after the shots. And also, Jim Lavelle told me personally, for what it's worth, in the summer of 2019, I was in his living room for almost 6 hours, and he told me personally, you can give this however much weight you want to, but he told me that they were certain that the lineups were on the up and up because the last thing they wanted was for any identification to be thrown out at a trial. And I've also talked to district attorneys, more than one now, by the way, and every one of them have told me when I laid out the scenario, unbiased, that even if you feel the lineups should be thrown out, that doesn't mean the judge would not allow an in-courtroom identification by the witness. So we don't know. In fact, I believe I know, but I can't state it as a fact. So we don't know for sure that Scoggins, Markham, Davis, Calloway, and Ginyard, I feel like when they're up on the witness stand and the let's say the lineups are thrown out, which I don't think they would be, but let's say they were.
Yeah, they would.
No, you don't know that. You do not know that at all. But let's say, for example, for now, that they were thrown out. That doesn't stop the prosecuting attorney from asking these 6 witnesses, hey, can you point out the man you saw in the courtroom today? And these 6 witnesses, if they picked him out of lineup, they're going to point him out to right there on the defendant's chair right there. They're going to point right to Oswald because they picked, and I know that because they picked him at the lineup.
They picked him, but they didn't identify him.
That doesn't make any sense.
It does pick.
Chris, can you explain this to me real quick? What that means? Because Matt,
hold on.
I don't know what that means.
So you said Jim Lavelle in your interview with, I believe it was on Quorum Radio. Anyway, you said, quote, Lavelle told you that they, the police, quote, did everything right in the lineups, end quote. I wrote it down. Is that true? Lavelle told you this.
Now I honestly could not tell you his exact words, but I got the point that he was making.
In your interview on Quorum Radio, Bill, you said Lavelle told you they, the police, quote, did everything right in the lineups. Wow. I mean, folks with even a cursory knowledge about this case would leap off their chairs at this outrageous comment. Okay, I want to close this off by saying, in 1979, this isn't a quote. In 1979, Larry Harris, who was the world's leading authority on the Tippit case, he passed away the year I was born, actually.
You say was or is?
I said was. He was the world's leading authority. In 1979, Larry Harris asked Dr. Dr. Robert Buckout, who was a leading U.S. expert on eyewitness testimony and identification, to evaluate the police lineups. Okay, so he's very, very qualified. Okay, one of the best in the nation. He did so and concluded, quote, by any stretch of the imagination, virtually every rule in the book was violated in the conduct of these lineups. The results of any of these lineups, conducted as poorly and under its hysterical circumstances as they were, should be regarded as utterly worthless. End quote. That is a leading U.S. the leading U.S. expert on eyewitness testimony and identification.
I don't care who that is. Jim Lavelle told me that they did everything that they had to do to make sure the lineups were on the up and up and would not be through
so I just want to point out how insane that quote was. How about how
So Jim Lavelle made an insane quote then, according to you. Made an insane comment.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I knew Jim Lavelle since I was 16, so I'm not going to say a bad word.
Well, let me ask you a question. Does Jim Lavelle have credibility or not?
I went to his funeral. I'm not going.
That doesn't mean anything. That's beside the point.
I'm not going to say a bad word about him, but I'm saying that quote, "They did everything right in the lineups," is outrageous. Next topic.
Is Jim Lavelle credible or not?
I'm not here to talk about Jim Lavelle.
Okay, so
I knew him since I was 16. I went to the man's funeral. I'm not going to say a bad word about him. Next topic.
Regarding the witnesses, though, there was still also Mary Brock, by the way, for what it's worth. Her husband, Robert Brock, worked at the Shell station that was at the corner of basically 1 block west of Patton and Jefferson. And she said that Oswald made his way behind the Texaco station. He was wearing a jacket when he did so. And she identified this man as being Oswald. So for what it's worth, Mary Brock has Lee Harvey Oswald behind the Texaco station wearing a jacket.
And and her husband standing right next to her
could not be sure one way or the other.
I can finish. Could not identify Oswald.
Correct. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
I think people. I'm not sure if I summarized. I did not summarize this in round 1 last year. But I think people forget that 12 witnesses refused to identify Oswald. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Next topic.
Robert Brock refusing to identify Oswald is not to be taken as Robert Brock saying the guy was not Oswald.
I never said it was.
Okay, then what's your point? Then what's your point with it?
To identify Oswald. Okay, and
Mary Brock said the guy was Oswald and he had a jacket and he went behind the Texaco station.
And the guy and her husband next to her can't identify Oswald. Next topic.